Hey everybody, welcome back. Mike from Spectre Comics. Today's going to be a different kind of video. We're going to actually be working on refining the design of a character that I created for my comic. This is the villain. His name is Captain Gorgo. Initially I did a video a while back on drawing the character. This is the drawing that resulted from that video. And just to give you a little backstory, this character was mentioned and hinted to earlier in the earlier issues of Spectre Comics. And issues 1 through 6 had the Spectre kind of chasing down this enemy who was pretty much unknown. I never revealed what the character looked like or who he was. In fact, it's not even, we know who the enemy are, a race of beings called the Ori, but we didn't know who was in charge. And so issue 7 is going to reveal this new character. So when I created this character and designed him, you know, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to look like. You know, my characters are very cartoony, and so this enemy looks a little cartoony. So I kind of wanted to kind of take another look at it, kind of refine it, taking just some poses and kind of I kind of drew some sketches in my sketch pad here, which are just various poses, action poses for the character. And what I'm going to do is just kind of take one of them and, you know, ink over it. So these are a couple of action poses, one jumping, one kind of like crouching on the ground, almost Spider-Man style. The one that kind of stuck with me was this one, and I, in blue pencil, just started penciling the character over it, and I think we'll just kind of take this as a starting point and then just modify it from there. And, you know, so I'm using a Pentel paintbrush, which I saw in a video by Jake Parker, the artist behind Inktober, and I just liked the way that pen looked, so I thought I would, you know, buy it and try to using it. And I've done a couple of shorts with this pen, but I haven't really been able to figure out the best way to use it. I'm also using a new tool on my tripod so that I can get more overhead shots. Basically attaches to your tripod and your camera and then extends out over, and it locks it in place so you can get kind of a straight down shot. So we'll kind of evaluate that tool, and this is the first time I'm using it. I did a video earlier which I showed you how to like set up your camera tripod to film your drawing, so that when you're drawing on your paper, the camera just points right down. But the problem with the way I did it before was that you got a slight angle because the camera was offset, and you had to tilt the camera up or down to get a shot, and then you had to like rotate the image in editing so that the picture looked right side up. So in this tool just really allows you to get more of a straight down shot from the camera all the way down to the page. So let's see how that works. Anyway, I'll kind of just talk through what I'm thinking as I use this pen, again the Pentel paintbrush inking pen, which the nice thing about it is it gives you a nice, it can give you a very fine line and it can give you a very heavy line. What I found is that I get really, I find it difficult to control the pen sometimes, and so I'm kind of still learning how to use it, because sometimes it smears when you push down a little too hard. So I'm kind of just getting used to how to use it, because you almost have to use it as a paintbrush. And you know, I'm just trying to figure it out and keep, because the pen, when you push down on the pen, it tends to smush down the bristles, and then it'll give you a wider line than maybe you're looking for. Like over here, I didn't like the way that worked out. But it can also be, if you use it very lightly, you can get a very fine, thin detail line as well. But I do like the way that the drawing looks with the pen. So if you look at a couple of shorts I did where I used this inking pen, they did come out pretty artistic, creative drawings. I did like that. Now, one of the things that I don't like about this character design is he doesn't have a lot of sharp edges. He's almost too smooth to be a villain. And you know, I feel like in order to make him look a little more menacing, he's got to have some sharp edges to him. And so I'm trying to figure that out, and that's kind of what we're going to be doing here. Now, this character is designed to be a larger version of the enemy character, which are called the Ori. And the Ori are mostly masked up. They wear these helmets, kind of like stormtroopers, They wear this armor, and you know, they're pretty much unknown entities. This character, I wanted you to see his face because I wanted him to have more expression. He yells a lot at his subordinates, and he wears kind of like an oculus on one eye, which allows him to see digitally and scan, kind of like the Terminator's vision, if you've ever seen the Terminator movie, where he kind of has readouts on it. So I'm just trying to figure out how to make this character look more menacing. But then I realized when I started inking page 7, or the first page of issue 7 of Spectre Comics, I didn't have a good idea of what he looked like from the opposite side, because this side of his face, the one with the oculus, I didn't understand how the oculus attached to his face and worked around his features. And so I'm not sure I'm doing myself any favors by drawing from this angle, but I'm going to give it a try. Again, I plan to do more of these drawings with this character, just from different angles. And I'll show you in a minute. Earlier in this sketchbook, I drew a couple of other drawings, which were kind of pulling apart the pieces. So, you know, one where I just did a close-up of his face, and you can see what that gear looks like from the opposite side, but how big it is, how it attaches to his face, that stuff's not really been resolved yet. I'm just trying to figure that stuff out. So I kind of like the way that looks. Like most Ori, he does have a fin on his head, but his head, again, is too round, and I'm just trying to make it more angular. And he's got some scars. He's got like a stitch here. But he needs more sharp edges. He needs to look more menacing and cruel. You know, my comics are generally funny humor with a little bit of adventure and even some peril for the main characters. I think that's what makes an interesting story. But you need to feel emotion for your main characters by feeling like they're in legitimate danger. And if you don't have an enemy that evokes that really makes it feel like the characters can be harmed in some way, then there's no way, you know, you don't really get to feel the emotional connection to the characters, like you care about them and you want them to be safe. So trying some stuff here. I do like the way this pen inks though. You get a nice black ink, you know, it does, but even when you have wavy, shaky lines, it can look really good because it's, you know, and I try to use line weights, and I've talked about line weights before in other videos. I actually did a full video on why line weights matter. I always feel that line weights really make a drawing pop. So what I do find when I'm designing characters though is I use kind of a language or a repertoire of pieces that find its way into a lot of the designs I do. The problem with that is all the characters tend to have the same features, and I'm trying to avoid that. Again, using this original base drawing as a starting point, I wanted to just kind of take this to the next level and draw the full body with an action pose. The captain here wears his armor. He's got the oculus on his face. He carries a staff. So even though he's the leader, he does engage in battle. And I find that makes him a little more interesting of an enemy because he can cause harm to his enemies. What I do find funny about his character, though, is that he just yells at his subordinates a lot, and they just kind of take it because they don't want to get in trouble. And so there's kind of running jokes in issue 7 about the characters having to interact with the captain and not wanting to. So yeah, I think what I'm finding here is that the captain is generally bigger than the other Ori. Not double the size, but bulkier because they're all thin. But the Ori do have a weakness, and their adversary, which is my character Arco, is an optling, and he is kind of his race is the enemy of the Ori, and their job, the optling's job, is to keep the Ori in check because they are a race of beings that basically pillage other worlds for their resources. So the optlings, who are more powerful than the Ori, are tasked with kind of keeping them in check, scouting their activities and making sure they're not causing harm to others, which they tend to do. So that's all kind of revealed in the storyline. I didn't expand too much on it because this story is a Spectre story and not an Arco story. My goal is to actually take the Arco character, who I designed specifically for this issue, this storyline of Spectre Comics, and basically take it further and do a Arco-only Optling comic, a short story with a little more background and a little more talking about what they do. And the reason is because I liked that character design so much, I just wanted to take it to the next level and make more stories about him. I didn't want to just have him be a part of this Spectre story and then just abandon that character. I like the character so much I put it on the banner that you see behind me in most of my videos because he was part of the story, but he's not really part of the Spectre group. He just temporarily joined them because they have a common goal in this storyline that I'm writing now. So the captain wears various pieces of armor. A lot of it just covers small pieces of his body. You know, he's got shoulder pads, arm pads over his biceps. And one of the features I designed into the Ori, because they are kind of a weak race in general, not the captain here, but the other Ori that you see throughout the story, is they're generally weak. So I wanted them to have the ability to have strength by creating bionic hands that attach almost as gloves over their arms from the wrist on, and that would give them a little bit more strength than they inherently have, because the Optlings are a stronger race than the Ori are. These panels on his chest were meant to give readouts and basically real-time data to his Oculus. But I want to kind of figure out what goes on here so it's consistent from every time I draw the character, he has the same pieces of equipment. I'm kind of looking at the design I did here, and the pieces on his chest I'm not even drawing the same things, but for the purposes of this drawing in this video, they don't necessarily need to match, but I should kind of figure out what each piece is so that I do keep it consistent when I'm drawing this character in various scenes. So the idea here is that he has a chest plate that wraps around his body, around his torso, and he's got some abdomen. His abs have armor pieces attached to the fabric underneath. The armor is meant to be a lighter color. I think if you look at the video I did on the cover of issue 6 of Spectre Comics, I did a whole video on the cover. It gives the colors of the armor of the Ori. I think most of it's red. I don't remember off the top of my head. I haven't actually looked at it in a while. But you know, red I thought was a little more menacing. You know, when you look at the Star Wars Stormtroopers, they are all in white. I think George Lucas said that he wanted them to remain colorless. So they were, you know, the good guys were all colorful and the bad guys were colorless, kind of indicating that they had no soul or no heart, and they were just bad guys. And when I get down to the legs and the lower part of the character, I wanted to give them more, you know, even though you can kind of see his legs here, I wanted to draw his pants as if it was like fabric so that there's more folds, and I'm not really good at drawing clothing on characters, and you know, a lot of superheroes have like skin tight uniforms, but I wanted the Ori to have more like pants where you'd see the folds and the various aspects of the clothing without just being skin tight to their legs. Learning how to do that, it's actually pretty complicated to draw fabric if you don't do it a lot. But yeah, I think is, you know, if you get the form underneath and then you kind of figure out where the folds, where the fabric would be pulling, you can kind of get a good idea of how to draw it. I don't have any examples pulled up for me to look at here, but you know, the idea here is he's got like a pocket where he can keep some equipment or other trinkets, but his pants are meant to be baggy and have a little more substance to them than just skin-tight spandex like Superman. I did want the Ori to wear kind of boots, and even though I want the captain to look a little different than your basic Ori foot soldier, They do all wear the same boots, but I think I might add a little more detail here into the captain's boots to make them, again, look more menacing and, you know, have a little more, you know, kind of distinguish them a little more from the other characters. So in the story, the main Ori bad guys that you follow, just to give a little bit of context to the enemy, are two Ori that end up being more trouble than they're worth for the Spectre. Spectre in this issue have landed on the asteroid where the Ori are doing mining the planet for their resources. And what they're doing here is they've gone around the galaxy kidnapping other beings, other aliens, for their labor to mine, to work in the mines on an asteroid that is hidden in the middle of a sector of space that's kind of way out there. And that's kind of like why the Spectre are even looking, because they've had teammates who have been kidnapped and taken by the Ori to work in the mines. And that's kind of like the whole storyline kind of follows that theme where they're looking for their missing companions. The characters that are missing are not characters that I've introduced before in any other Spectre story information, but what they are is basically another team of Spectre explorers, like Spark's team, like my main character's team, who go around looking for resources on planet, and then planets that are uninhabited, so they're not stealing anybody else's resources, but they go basically and scout locations for resources, and then the Spectre teams will come back and mine that planet for their resources. Again, uninhabited planets, so they're not stealing anybody's resources. So the captain here, I always have trouble drawing hands. I wanted to do a video specifically on why hands are so difficult to draw for me, and maybe a lot of other people, not just me. But I kind of like this action pose. There's a lot more detail in the captain's costume. I actually drew him with lines on his uniform here, which is probably a mistake because then I'm gonna have to do it every time I draw him. I'm just kind of filling out some extra detail, but for the sake of this video, he does have kind of lines that follow his uniform, almost like the webbing on Spider-Man's uniform. And then it gets a little more detailed when you get to the lower part of the arm. And I'm obviously avoiding drawing the hands because that's, again, the hardest part for me, but we'll see how it goes in a minute. This hand, I'll give that a try. Let's see how it turns out. I find that the hands are just very difficult to draw because I can never get the right angle on the hands. I already put too much ink right here, so that's going to be a problem. A lot of the characters that I draw have only 3 fingers. The Spectre only have 2 fingers. That goes way back to when I was a kid and I loved drawing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the Turtles only had 2 fingers, and I always liked that as the design of their, in their design. So I kind of adopted it when I was drawing my Spectre characters. So that hand's okay, but I wish I could clean it up, but it's hard once you have inked it. This hand, he's only got 2 fingers here. Oh, he's got 3. All right, so you got 1, 2, 3 fingers. There you go. Again, I might go back and clean that up somehow, but this hand might be a little easier. This hand is grasping his staff, and I've learned actually a lot more recently about drawing hands, and especially grasping items, about how the fingers overlap. And one of the tricks I use is I will segment each finger digit so that it shows me kind of where the next one starts. I'm going to not use, for a staff, I'm not going to use this inking pen because it's hard to get a straight line. I just noticed that the foot is missing, so I'll push that up a little bit. So the lower foot, and I should kind of look at this boot again to do something else. I do use straight edges when I draw straight lines, and I can't ink with that with the paintbrush on a straight edge. It just bends too much. You get you get lines that that vary too much. So if we draw a straight line for this staff, then we'll go ahead and ink that. Now the staff from what I drew here is basically it looks like it's got a double blade on the end of it. So we'll probably do something similar here. And then when I go ahead and do ink it, I will use a different type of pen, just a regular inking pen that I used to use actually to ink all my comics. So what do I got here? I got a micron 0.5. I've got these Millennium pens, and I think I had a Prismacolor 0.8. I don't even know if these still work. Let me see. Yeah, this one does. All right, let's try the Prismacolor. We'll just go ahead and ink the staff here. It's probably a little thicker than I want it to be. But with this kind of inking pen, I can get a nice sharp line with it, especially with a straight edge. I do feel like this pen's running out of ink because I can feel it. Not giving me the heaviest line it should. Okay, so I think my camera cut off because it has a time limit for how long you can film. Right as I was finishing the drawing, and this, the staff you didn't get to see, but just to kind of quickly summarize, I did use a straight edge to do the straight line work. I did use regular inking pens so that I could get much sharper straight lines, because the Pentel inking paint pen does not work well with a straight edge, because you just can't get a sharp line with it. So I used the regular inking pens. I think I used the Micron and the Millennium, and actually I used all three, the Prismacolor, 2 or 3 of them. I don't actually remember. I'll have to go back and look at the footage. But then I went over it with the paintbrush just to give it a little more wiggle to the line. Now that the lines were straight and drawn in, you can see the line work right here in the middle is pretty sharp, because I used the straight edge and the inking triangle here to get the straight lines. But then again, taking the paint pen to kind of finish the drawing. And I don't know. I think this is pretty good. Going back to the original Captain Gorgo drawing, I did this on my tablet, drawing with my digital tablet. I've been doing a lot more work in my sketchbook lately, and I just think that this is a good start for this character design. He looks a little more menacing, and I think it's actually because of the line weights. I do want to still try to get a little more sharper edges into him. I did say in the video that had cut off that Bowser's kind of a big bad enemy for Mario in the Mario movie, but he's got a lot of curves, not a lot of sharp edges. But again, I just want to kind of revisit this design and kind of refine it more and more until I get it kind of locked down. But I need to lock it down pretty quickly, because I got to start finishing inking issue 7 of Spectre Comics, and this character is going to be in there a lot. So learning how to draw him properly is going to be helpful. That's the drawing. Hope you enjoyed the process of kind of refining this character with me. Yeah, so I think this will work as a good starting point for refining this character a little further. Let me know what you think in the comments. Go ahead and like the video, subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you later. Have a great day.